Usually when we look at the world around us, there is this this deep, almost biological expectation of absolute solidity.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, think about a time you've been injured or, maybe you've been with a friend in the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
You go in, you're in pain, everything feels super chaotic.
Yeah.
And then the doctor puts an x-ray up on the light board.
Right. The moment of truth.
Exactly. There is that stark black background and that thick, jagged white line running right through the radius bone.
Yeah.
And the doctor just points a pen at it and says, there it is, that's the fracture. And in that moment, despite the pain, there is an immense sense of relief.
Because it provides diagnostic certainty.
Yeah.
I mean, the ambiguity is just gone.
Yeah.
You are left with a binary state of reality. The bone is broken. The world is measurable.
And we crave that. Like,
Yeah.
we build our entire mental models around that exact feeling of the jagged white line. Cause and effect.
Broken or not broken.
Here or there, it's clean, it is, engineering level precise, and frankly, it's deeply comforting. We want the things in our lives to be visible and neatly categorized.
We want them to have a definite start and a definite end.
Right. But it goes far beyond just physical objects, doesn't it?
Oh, way beyond. I mean,
Yeah.
we navigate our entire lives, our relationships, our careers, assuming that the ground beneath our feet is a fixed, absolute reality.
Like it's permanent.
Exactly. We assume we are a solid self moving through a solid world, experiencing independent, solid events.
But then, you step into the world of ancient Madhyamaka philosophy.
Yeah, and that's where the trouble starts.
Right. Specifically, you step into the mind of the 2nd century Indian philosopher Nagarjuna, and suddenly, when you look at his work, you realize that the X-ray machine itself is broken.
The light board is flickering.
Yes.
Yeah.
The solid bones of reality, the things we literally thought were the most fundamental building blocks of the universe, start looking a lot more like a mirage.
A total illusion.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you with us. You, the ever-curious learner who isn't afraid to, have their fundamental assumptions totally challenged.
Because they will be challenged today.
Oh, they definitely will be. Today, our mission is to take a journey into Nagarjuna's masterpiece, the Mūlamadhyamakakārikā, or the root verses on the middle way.
It's an incredible text.
It really is. We are going to focus specifically on the first 3 chapters, and let me tell you, as we go through these sources, it becomes incredibly clear that this is not just some dusty history lesson on ancient philosophy.
Far from it.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're looking at here is a systematic, relentless deconstruction of literally everything you think you know about how the universe operates.
Everything.
Yeah. Nagarjuna isn't interested in just tweaking your perspective. He is dismantling the very grammar of your reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if you are listening right now, you might be wondering, why you should dedicate an hour to a 2nd century text.
Fair question.
Here is the promise of this deep dive. The big idea we are exploring today. We are going to look at how the very fabric of our reality, how things are caused, how we physically move through space, and how we actually perceive the world around us, is entirely devoid of solid, independent events.
Which sounds crazy at first.
It sounds totally crazy, but instead of being solid, it is an illusory, limitless, and centerless fractal karmic cycle.
That's the core of it.
By the time we finish, you will understand how reality continually oscillates between poles. You will see how the absolute end of one action instantly, and I mean instantly, becomes the origin point of the next, forming an infinite loop.
And that concept of the oscillating pole is just the crucial context to keep in mind here.
Right.
Because we are going to be diving into some pretty intense dialectical logic today. We will be taking apart concepts like causality and sight.
The basics of human experience.
Exactly. But Nagarjuna did not write this text just to, win a debate in a courtyard somewhere. This is a highly practical meditative tool.
So it has a real purpose.
A huge purpose. It's designed with incredible, almost surgical precision to liberate us from suffering.
Wow.
Because the suffering we experience, the stress, the anxiety, the heartbreak, is largely caused by our relentless grasping at that solid, fixed reality you mentioned with the X-ray.
We want the bone to be perfectly solid forever.
Right. When we think the X-ray is the ultimate truth, we suffer endlessly when the bone inevitably changes or breaks or ages. Nagarjuna wants to free us from the trap of grasping at mirages.
Okay, so to get to that freedom, we have to start by laying the groundwork. Before we look at causality or motion, we really need to understand the tools Nagarjuna brings to the table.
You have to know how his lens works.
Right, we need to look through his specific, highly radical lens. The sources make it clear that this all begins with a framework called the union of the two truths.
Yeah, and the two truths framework is the absolute foundation of all Madhyamaka thought.
So we can't skip this.
No, if you skip this, everything else Nagarjuna says will just sound like complete nihilism, like nothing matters.
And he's not saying that.
Not at all. The two truths are the ultimate truth and the conventional truth.
Okay, let's break those down.
So, the ultimate truth is what Nagarjuna refers to as emptiness.
Emptiness, which sounds like nothingness.
It does, but specifically, it's the emptiness of inherent existence. The Sanskrit term for this inherent existence is svabhava.
Svabhava. Okay.
And this is the idea that a thing has a fixed, isolated, independent essence. It's the idea that something exists purely on its own, completely cut off from the conditions around it.
Like it holds its own reality from its own side.
Exactly. It holds its own intrinsic nature. Now, Nagarjuna's ultimate truth is that svabhava does not exist anywhere in the universe.
Wait, anywhere?
Anywhere. Everything is empty of it.
Okay, I hear that, but I have to push back immediately because, I'm sitting in a wooden chair right now.
Right.
My hands are resting on a desk. The chair feels completely solid. It has weight. It resists my hand when I push against it. It feels like it has a very inherent, chairness to it.
Of course it does. The chair holds your weight. The desk holds your computer. Your car gets you to work.
Right.
That is the conventional truth.
Yeah.
The conventional truth is the world of dependent origination. It's how things function in everyday life through causes and conditions.
Okay, so he's not denying my lived experience.
No, Nagarjuna is not a fool. He isn't claiming the chair is an empty void of nothingness and you are magically hovering above the floor.
That's a relief.
He is saying that the ultimate truth of emptiness and the conventional truth of functionality are inseparable. In fact, they require each other.
Wait, they require each other, so the chair can only hold me up because it lacks an inherent essence.
Yeah. Think about what it would actually mean if the wood of your chair had svabhava. If it had a fixed, unchanging, independent essence.
Okay, if it was permanently, inherently wood.
If the wood possessed an ultimate frozen nature, it could never change.
Oh.
Right. A carpenter could never have cut the tree down. The tree could never have grown from a seed. It could never decay.
It could never be carved into the legs of a chair.
Exactly. For anything to function, interact, or change in the conventional world, it must be completely fluid. It must be devoid of a frozen core. It must be empty.
That's fascinating.
The conventional world only works because of ultimate emptiness.
Okay, is it like a reflection in a mirror?
That's a great analogy.
Because, if I stand in front of a mirror, the reflection conventionally exists. I can see it. It functions.
You can use it to shave or whatever.
Right. I can use it to fix my collar or comb my hair. It reacts to my movements. But ultimately, it has no independent mass or reality of its own. It's kind of there, yet not there.
Yes.
Because if I try to reach into the glass and actually pull the reflection out, I'm just going to hit cold glass. It has no svabhava.
And if you look closely at that reflection, it only arises dependently.
What do you mean?
Well, it relies entirely on the mirror being polished. It relies on the light source in the room. And it relies on the physical presence of your body standing in front of it.
Right. Remove the light, the reflection vanishes.
Exactly. Move your body, the reflection vanishes. Because it is a dependently arisen phenomenon, it is entirely empty of its own independent essence.
Wow. Okay.
The conventional appearance of you fixing your collar and the ultimate emptiness of the image are the exact same phenomenon. They're just viewed from two different angles.
So you cannot separate the emptiness of the reflection from the appearance of the reflection.
You cannot separate them. That is the union of the two truths.
The appearance is the emptiness. The emptiness allows the appearance. That is wild.
It really shifts how you see things.
But Nāgārjuna doesn't just ask us to take his word for it, right? Or just rely on nice metaphors like mirrors. He uses a very specific logical engine to break down our normal way of thinking and practically prove this emptiness.
He's incredibly rigorous.
Yeah, the sources call it the tetralemma.
Right, the tetralemma. So in Western logic, dating back to Aristotle, we primarily operate on a dilemma.
The law of the excluded middle.
Exactly. Something is either A or it is B. It is true or it is false.
A statement is either existent or non-existent. Like we said earlier, the X-ray shows the bone is broken or not broken.
But Indian logic, which Nagarjuna utilizes here, introduces a much more comprehensive framework. It adds two more options, creating a fourfold negation, the tetralemma.
Okay, what are the four?
He argues that the inherent nature of any phenomenon reality itself cannot be logically defined as 1, existent,
yeah.
2, non-existent,
Sure.
3, both existent and non-existent, or 4, neither existent nor non-existent.
Okay, wait. If it's not any of those 4, what on earth is left?
Nothing.
Because when you say neither existent nor non-existent, you have literally covered every single conceivable option my brain can possibly generate.
What's fascinating here is that that is precisely the goal. The tetralemma is not designed to give you a secret 5th option.
So he's not hiding a new answer behind door number 5.
No. Nagarjuna is not presenting a brand new theory of the universe to replace your old ones. He's not saying, you thought reality was a square, but it's actually a triangle. Here is your new box.
Yeah.
He is using the tetralemma to systematically dismantle the human mind's reliance on boxes altogether.
He is destroying the very framework of categorization.
Yes. When he takes a concept and proves that it cannot logically be inherently existent, because that would mean it's frozen and unchangeable.
Like the solid wood we talked about.
Right. And he proves it cannot be inherently non-existent because then we wouldn't experience it conventionally.
It could just sit on the chair.
Exactly. And it can't be both because that's a flat-out logical contradiction.
It can't exist and not exist at the same time.
Right. And it can't be neither because that leaves us with no conceptual ground at all. By negating all 4 extreme positions, he essentially forces your conceptual dualistic mind to hit a brick wall.
You just run out of thoughts.
The analytical mind exhausts itself. And when that grasping mind finally stops, you are forced to rest in the middle way.
So the middle way isn't a compromise between existence and non-existence then? Like it's not a 50-50 split. It's stepping off the spectrum entirely.
It is a state of experiencing reality exactly as it is. As a fluid, dependently arisen process without projecting our rigid categories, words, or concepts onto it.
It's almost like he is running a diagnostic virus scan on your brain, and he is actively looking for corrupted files.
That's a great way to put it.
And the corrupted files are simply our deeply ingrained biological assumptions about how solid the world is.
Yes, the grasping.
And once he has established these tools, the 2 truths and the tetralemma, he starts applying them. The sources reveal a hidden structural pattern that actually unites the first 3 chapters of the text.
And this is the core of it all.
Yeah, this is the blueprint for our entire deep dive today. It's called the union of the 3 spheres.
The 3 spheres. So when we observe the world, when we try to make sense of our lives, our language and our cognition automatically break reality down into a triad.
A triad.
3 parts. We inherently divide any event into 3 spheres. First, there's the subject. That's the actor, the one initiating the event. Second, there is the relation. That's the action itself, the dynamic process.
Right.
And third, there is the object, the result, the destination, or the thing being acted upon.
So noun, verb, noun, the fundamental grammar of human experience.
Perfect.
Like, I drink the coffee, I am the subject, the act of drinking is the relation, the coffee is the object.
Where the X-ray machine takes the picture.
Right.
And here is the core focus of what we are really unraveling today. Nāgārjuna demonstrates that these 3 spheres absolutely do not exist independently of one another.
They can't be separated.
You cannot have a completely independent drinker floating in a void without the act of drinking and the beverage being drunk.
Because then you're not a drinker.
Right. They co-evolve in real time. They co-define each other. They're entirely interdependent.
I mean, I follow the logic that they need each other to form a complete sentence or to, describe a complete event. But the sources push this much deeper than just grammar.
Way deeper.
They describe this interaction as a karmic fractal, an oscillating loop. They assert that reality is not a straight line from point A to point B, but a centerless cycle where the result of the action feeds directly back into the subjective origin point.
If you want to understand Nāgārjuna, you really have to undergo a profound paradigm shift regarding time and action.
Okay, how so?
In our conventional mindset, we believe time moves linearly. I, as an independent, solid subject, decide to perform an action.
A to B.
Right. That action pushes out into the world and produces a final result out there, separate from me, the end.
Right.
I move on to the next independent event.
That's how we all live.
But Nāgārjuna argues that because the 3 spheres are empty of inherent existence, they are completely permeable.
So they bleed into each other.
They are constantly updating each other. The action you perform and the result you achieve don't just sit out there in the world when they're done. They instantly turn back around and redefine you, the subject.
So the end of the cycle becomes the origin point of the next cycle.
Yes. The destination you reach conditions the new traveler. The object you perceive conditions the new perceiver. It is a continuous fractal oscillation.
Okay, but So if there is no definite starting line and no absolute finish line to anything we do, how does anything actually happen?
It sounds paralyzing, I know.
It does. If everything is just a centerless loop of updates, aren't we just paralyzed? Like, if I can't definitively cause something to happen from a solid starting point, I feel like I can't interact with the world at all.
Our dualistic minds naturally panic at the loss of a solid foundation.
Yeah, and I'm panicking a little.
But actually, recognizing this centerless cycle is the only thing that explains how change is even possible.
How?
Well, to really see how this oscillating loop functions in practice, rather than just abstract theory,
Really?
we have to follow Nagarjuna into Chapter 1. We have to watch him deconstruct the most fundamental assumption of all, causality.
Cause and effect. The bedrock of science, of psychology, of, just getting out of bed in the morning.
Everything relies on it.
So, applying the three spheres blueprint to Chapter 1, we are looking at the triad of causality. The cause, which is the subject, the causality or the process of production, the relation, and the effect, the object.
Right.
We think of this as the ultimate law. A cue ball rolls across the felt, hits an 8-ball, and the 8-ball goes into the corner pocket. Cause and effect. Clean, observable, irrefutable.
And Nagarjuna walks right up to that billiard table with the tetralemma.
Oh boy.
He systematically dismantles the 4 possible ways that inherent causality could operate. He looks at the cause and asks how it inherently produces the effect.
Using the 4 options we talked about.
Exactly. First, he addresses the idea that things are self-caused. Do things arise independently out of nowhere by their own intrinsic power?
Like something giving birth to itself.
Right. If a sprout causes itself, it would already have to exist to produce itself, which renders the whole act of production totally meaningless.
Right, the sprout can't give birth to the sprout. That's a logical loop that goes literally nowhere.
Second, he asks if things are other-caused. Do they arise from a completely separate, independent entity? Now, if the cause and the effect have absolutely no inherent relationship, if they are completely isolated separate things, then the logic of causality breaks down completely.
Why?
Because if independent otherness is all it takes, anything could produce anything. A flame could produce darkness. A stone could produce a flower.
Ah, if the cue ball and the 8-ball are completely inherently separate universes, the cue ball hitting the 8-ball wouldn't transfer energy. They would just pass through each other or have no relation.
Exactly. There has to be a dependent connection, not an inherent separation.
Okay, what's the third?
Third, he addresses the idea that they are caused by a combination of both self and other.
But combining 2 logical fallacies doesn't somehow manufacture a truth.
Spot on. If self-causation is flawed and other causation is flawed, mashing them together just fails twice as hard.
Makes sense.
And fourth, he looks at the idea that they are caused by neither, meaning things just happen randomly without any causes or conditions at all.
Which completely contradicts our lived conventional experience. Because planting a seed produces a sprout, not a car.
Right, so he eliminates every single option for how a cause can inherently or absolutely produce an effect.
And what's fascinating in the sources is that he doesn't just attack abstract concepts here. He goes after the specific, accepted psychological and philosophical models of his time.
He really goes for the jugular.
He specifically deconstructs the 4 types of conventional conditions accepted in early Buddhist philosophy: the primary cause, the object of sensation, the preceding moment of consciousness, and the dominant condition or purpose.
He leaves no stone unturned.
He examines every thread of how we think the world operates and proves that none of these conditions possess a solid, independent essence.
Because think about it. If a cause possessed a permanent, unchanging, inherent essence, it would be frozen in time.
Frozen, like the wood.
It could never step out of itself to interact with a condition and produce a change. The cue ball would just be a frozen concept of a cue ball.
So causes and effects are utterly empty of independent reality.
Absolutely. But let's bring back the union of the 2 truths.
The ultimate and the conventional?
Yes. They are empty, therefore they can function. Because they are fluid, because they lack strict boundaries, they can participate in what the sources call an infinite karmic regress and progress.
This is where we return to the fractal cycle, the oscillating pole.
Yes. Causality is not a straight line from A to B. It is an infinite loop. A cause interacts with conditions to generate an effect.
Right.
But that effect doesn't just arrive at the end of the line, sit down, and declare the job finished.
It doesn't retire.
No. The very moment the effect manifests, it instantly becomes cause 2 for the next cycle. The outcome conditions the next origin.
Oh, Okay, so if we look at the seed and the sprout again, conventionally we say I plant the seed. That is the cause. The sprout growing out of the dirt is the effect. We draw a box around that event and call it done.
We box it up.
But in reality, the process doesn't end with the sprout. The
No.
sprout grows into a mature plant, the mature plant blossoms, gets pollinated, and drops a brand new seed into the soil.
Yeah.
The effect of the first cycle is literally just the cause of the next cycle wearing a different mask.
Is the cause in disguise. It is an unbroken continuum of updates. Because every single cause is merely the effect of prior conditions, there is no absolute first cause anywhere in the universe.
No big bang of causality.
No. If you trace your seed back, it came from a previous plant, which came from a previous seed, stretching back into infinite regress. And there is no absolute final effect stretching into the future.
So reality is an endless, centerless cycle of karmic updates.
Every single sphere, the cause, the process, the effect, continually conditions and is conditioned by the others.
I want to pause here and look at what this means for someone listening right now. Forget the cue ball and the seed for a second. Let's say you have a deeply stressful meeting coming up with your boss.
Oh, it's a perfect example.
You are trying to perfectly architect the cause, what you wear, the presentation you built, the exact words you're going to say, to guarantee a very specific effect, which is your boss approving your project.
Right, you want to nail the A to get the B.
You are operating on the assumption of inherent linear causality. You think if you just get the origin point right, you can definitively control the end point.
And that assumption is the exact root of your anxiety. You are trying to freeze a fluid system.
Because there are a million other variables.
Exactly. When you realize that the meeting is not an isolated A to B event, but a centerless loop of infinite conditions, your boss's mood, the company's financials, what your boss had for breakfast, your own subtle body language, you see that absolute determinism is a complete fantasy.
You cannot isolate your single cause and perfectly control an ultimate effect.
Because the boundaries between the actor, the action, and the result are completely fluid. They rely on an infinite web of perspectives and prior conditions.
So realizing that you are just a temporary node in this infinite loop of causes becoming effects becoming causes. I mean, it doesn't mean you don't prepare for the meeting.
No, you still make the PowerPoint.
Right. But it completely loosens the psychological death grip of needing to control the universe.
It creates spaciousness. The anxiety begins to dissolve because you recognize the mirage for what it is.
Okay, but let's take this a step further. Here's where it gets really interesting. If causality is just this centerless loop of updates without a solid foundation, what happens when I literally just try to move my body through the world?
Now we're getting physical.
Yeah, if there is no definitive cause and effect, how do I get from my couch to my kitchen? This dilemma bridges us directly into chapter 2 of the text, where Nagarjuna examines motion.
He takes the exact same architectural blueprint of the three spheres and applies it to physical displacement.
Okay, so what is the triad here?
The triad of movement is the goer, the subject, the act of going, the relation,
Yeah.
and the destination, the object.
Got it.
If chapter 1 pulled the rug out from under our concept of time and causal logic, chapter 2 completely shatters our solid foundation of space and physical agency.
So how does he break down motion? I mean, I can literally see people walking outside my window right now. The action is happening.
He sets what philosophers often refer to as a temporal trap.
A trap.
He asks us to look at the act of motion strictly through the lens of time. The past, the future, and the present. He asks a deceptively simple question. Where exactly does the act of moving take place? Where is the motion located?
Well, let's walk through it. It obviously cannot take place in the past. What he calls the already gone. The action there is finished. The space has been traversed. There is no active motion happening in the past.
Correct. The already gone is devoid of current motion. And similarly, the motion cannot be located in the future, the not yet gone.
Because the action hasn't even begun.
Right. The space has not been entered. There's no active motion there either.
Okay, so by simple process of elimination, the motion must exist in the present, in the exact moment of the present going.
That is the instinctual answer. But Nagarjuna then asks you to zoom in on that present going and isolate it.
Okay, zooming in.
Can you find a present moment of motion that is completely inherently separate from the past and the future? If you shrink the present down to an infinitesimal, frozen, dimensionless point in time, a single Planck length of time, there is zero room for displacement.
Oh, I see.
To say, I am currently moving, inherently implies a span. It implies you've just arrived from somewhere, the past, and you are leaning towards somewhere else, the future.
So the present is totally dependent on the boundaries of the past and future.
Exactly. Which means an isolated, independent present going with its own inherent essence literally cannot exist.
It's like trying to find the motion in a single frame of a film reel.
That is a brilliant way to picture it.
If you look at one frame, the character's frozen. It's only in the dependent relationship between the multiple frames that the illusion of motion occurs.
Yes.
But surely, even if the going is an illusion of time, there is a physical person who possesses the motion, right? Like there is a solid mover.
Well, if an opponent tries to argue that there is a solid independent mover who possesses a separate act of moving, Nagarjuna exposes a rather hilarious logical absurdity. He calls it the fallacy of two motions.
Two motions.
Think about it. If the identity of the goer and the action of the going are completely separate inherent things, it would require two distinct motions to make an event happen.
Walk me through that. Why two?
You would need one primary motion just to give the person the identity of a mover, to qualify them as the subject.
Okay.
And then you would need a second, completely separate motion for the actual physical act of their feet traversing space.
Which would imply that there are two movers, like some sort of metaphysical ghost mover overlapping with the physical person walking down the street.
It implies the existence of two agents for a single action, which completely contradicts our conventional reality. Therefore, the goer and the going cannot be completely different, separate entities.
They can't be two distinct things.
But, and here's the tetralemma at work, they also cannot be completely identical.
Why not?
If the actor and the action are the exact same thing, then the person walking and the street being walked upon collapse into a single blob, and the whole concept of a subject performing a deed vanishes.
So the subject and the action co-arise. They are mutually dependent.
Yes.
And this brings us roaring right back to the central theme, the fractal karmic cycle, the oscillating pole. If the goer, the going, and the destination don't exist independently, they must co-evolve and update each other in real time.
Apply the blueprint from Chapter 1. A subject, let's call them goer 1, initiates the action of going in order to reach a destination.
Right.
But just like the effect of the seed becoming the cause for the next plant, arrival at the destination is never a permanent static endpoint.
Okay, let's say I get up from my couch to walk to the fridge to get a glass of water. The fridge is the destination, the object. But the universe doesn't end when my hand touches the handle of the refrigerator.
No, it doesn't. The moment of arrival instantly updates your status. The destination conditions the subject. The object transforms you into goer 2 at a brand new starting position.
So I reset.
You are no longer the person leaving the couch. You are now the person standing at the fridge with a glass of water, which contains an entirely new set of causal potentials, ready to initiate a new active movement back across the room. The end of the movement became the origin of the next.
I'm going to push back on this, though.
Please do.
Because subjectively, if I walk from the couch to the fridge, I feel like the exact same guy. My name is the same. My memories of the last 5 minutes are intact. I just changed coordinates. The background scenery changed, but the core me who did the walking remained constant.
What you are describing is the profound illusion of continuity that Nagarjuna is trying to dismantle.
It feels very real.
You feel like the same guy because your brain stitches the frames of the film reel together. But the goer is actually in a state of constant radical flux. You're continually redefined by the destinations you reach.
Redefined how?
Think about it biologically. In the 10 seconds it took you to walk to the fridge, thousands of your cells metabolized, died, and were replaced.
Physically, I changed.
Mentally, your intentions shifted entirely from seeking hydration to evaluating the contents of the fridge. Karmically, the physical act of walking has laid down a new imprint in your nervous system.
So I am literally not the same entity that left the couch.
The goer at destination instantly becomes the goer at origin for the next act. There was no independent, permanent self moving unchanged through the medium of space.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
The actor is merely a temporary snapshot of the action. Motion is a centerless continuum. The three spheres goer, going, destination are just mental imputations. They're labels we slap onto the flux after the fact to make sense of it.
So there was never a goer 1 at the very beginning.
There is no absolute beginning to your journey because goer 1 on the couch was already the destination of a previous movement. And there is no absolute end. You are a fluid process of relational events, not a static noun being transported from A to B.
The phrase, "we are verbs, not nouns," has never felt so literal.
It's exactly that.
Okay, so causality is a loop of updates. My physical motion through space is an illusion of updates without a solid core me doing the moving. But what about my internal world?
The mind.
Right. What about how I see, hear, and experience things? This logically pulls us right into chapter 3, which is the examination of perception.
It is the natural, necessary progression of the argument. He has addressed time and cause. He has addressed space and action. Now he must address consciousness and sensory experience.
So what's the triad for perception?
The triad here is the perceiver, the subject or sense organ, the perception, the relation or the act of seeing or knowing, and the perceived, the object or the external world.
And when Nagarjuna attacks the idea of inherent perception, he brings up a very specific metaphor that his philosophical opponents used, the fire analogy.
Yes, the opponents of Madhyamaka philosophy argued that perception, specifically consciousness, is self-validating and inherently existent.
Meaning it exists on its own.
Exactly. And they used fire as their proof. They said, look at a fire burning in a dark room. Fire illuminates other things, like the walls and the furniture, but it also illuminates itself.
Oh, that's clever.
Right. You don't need a flashlight to see a fire. Therefore, they argued, consciousness can perceive external objects, but it also inherently establishes its own existence.
Honestly, that sounds like an incredibly strong argument. Fire proves itself by simply existing.
It sounds bulletproof until Nagarjuna applies the logic of the three spheres to it. He refutes the fire analogy by pointing out a massive flaw in the physics.
What's the flaw?
If fire truly burned or illuminated its own inherent nature, it would consume itself instantly. The darkness doesn't exist within the fire to be illuminated.
Oh.
Furthermore, he pivots the analogy to the actual sense organs. He asks a very direct question. Can sight see itself? Can your eyeball look at its own act of seeing?
Well, I mean, I can look in a mirror and see the physical reflection of my pupil, but I cannot see the action of my own vision. I can't perceive the perceiving.
Precisely. A blade cannot cut itself. A fingertip cannot touch itself. And if a sense organ cannot perceive its own nature, it cannot inherently, independently perceive other things.
Because there's no solid anchor.
Right, because if there is no inherent standalone seeing existing on its own, there can be no inherent seer. Consciousness does not exist as an independent, glowing spotlight shining out of your head into the dark universe.
So how does it exist?
Consciousness only arises in dependence. It sparks into existence only upon the meeting of a sense organ and an object.
The perceiver and the perceived absolutely need each other to exist.
They co-arise.
Which brings us right back to the master blueprint, the oscillating karmic loop. And looking at the sources, this application in Chapter 3 might be the most profound and unsettling cycle yet.
It gets very personal here.
It does. So, a perceiver who is already conditioned by past experiences, biology, memories, and karma encounters a perceived world. But this encounter isn't a passive recording. Like, I am not a security camera just logging objective data.
You are highly active and co-creative. The encounter between the conditioned perceiver and the perceived object generates sensations, feelings, and cognitive imprints.
Okay.
And those imprints instantly update the perceiver into perceiver 2. The observer is fundamentally altered by the act of observation.
Let me try to translate this into a daily experience. Let's use the analogy of tinted glasses.
Let's hear it.
My past baggage, my mood, my karma, that acts as a pair of tinted glasses permanently affixed to my face. Let's say I've had a terrible morning, so the glasses have a deep red, angry tint.
That we've all been there.
I walk into a room, which is the perceived object. The red tint of my perceiver colors the room, so I perceive the room as hostile, chaotic, or annoying.
Right, the room reflects your tint.
And then my psychological reaction to that chaotic room, my stress spike, literally adds another layer of tint to my glasses, so now they are dark crimson.
The tint gets thicker.
And then I turn and look at the next room. The object that I observed literally became part of the observer's karmic framework for the next moment.
That is exactly how the karmic fractal operates in the realm of consciousness. The perceived world updates the perceiver.
It's a feedback loop.
The subject and the object are locked in an endless, co-evolving dance of conditioning. You do not passively observe an objective universe. You participate in generating it.
That is wild.
The reality you experience continually oscillates between the pole of the subjective mind and the pole of the objective world. And your experience of that world generates you.
This means there was never a first perceiver who is just a blank slate objectively recording the universe.
No absolute first perceiver and no final objective world waiting to be discovered. Reality is deeply participatory. What we experience daily is what the text might call a karmic mirage, a perpetually updating and projecting feedback loop.
A karmic mirage.
And the texts note that this realization is the direct attack on the root of samsara, the cycle of suffering.
Because if the perceiver, the perception, and the perceived are all empty of inherent existence, if they are just this oscillating feedback loop, then the intense grasping, the desire, the hatred we feel toward the world is based on a fundamental illusion.
Exactly.
We are clinging to a mirage that we are actively helping to project.
You are trying to grab the reflection in the mirror, completely forgetting that your own face is casting the shadow.
Okay, let's take a breath and zoom out. We have gone deep into the mechanics of 3 incredibly dense chapters.
You really have.
We have deconstructed causality, physical motion, and conscious perception into these limitless, centerless fractal loops. Every sphere constantly conditions the others. So what is the theoretical significance of this? What does a reality without a core actually imply for our worldview?
When you truly internalize this, when you see that everything is a dependently arisen loop, the rigid boundaries that define our conventional reality begin to violently dissolve.
Which boundaries?
The most immediate, profound boundary to collapse is the one between the individual, the collective, and the cosmos.
Break that down for me, because despite everything we've discussed, I still sit here feeling very much like an individual distinct from you, distinct from the collective society, and distinct from the cosmos outside the window.
Conventionally, you absolutely are. You have a name, a tax ID, and a separate body.
Right.
But ultimately, through Nagarjuna's framework, what actually is the individual? The individual is not a solitary permanent agent pulling levers behind a curtain.
No solid mover.
You are simply a momentary, fleeting intersection of these causal, locomotive, and perceptual cycles. You are the effect of thousands of previous causes. You are the destination of millions of previous movements. You are the updated perceiver of a lifetime of perceptions.
I am just a temporary node in an infinitely vast network.
Exactly. And because we just established that the perceived world constantly updates the perceiver, the outside world is constantly becoming your inside internal state.
It's crossing the border.
And reciprocally, because your karmic actions, your causes and movements ripple out to condition the collective environment around you, your inside is constantly becoming the outside.
The collapse of inside and outside. That is staggering. If my internal state is just a reflection of the collective conditions, and the collective is actively shaped by my actions, where do I end and the universe begin?
The boundary is an illusion. The cosmos is not a giant container holding a bunch of separate ping-pong ball individuals.
It's all one fabric.
The cosmos is the totality of these interlocking cycles. This is precisely why Nagarjuna's philosophy transcends all the traditional philosophical isms we try to fit reality into.
The sources mention that it transcends realism, idealism, dualism, and monism. How does this cycle refute all of those?
Well, it transcends realism, the idea that there is a purely objective, observer-independent physical world. Because, as we saw with the tinted glasses, the world is shaped by the perceiver's karmic framework.
Right, the subject shapes the object.
It transcends idealism, or solipsism, the idea that it's all just in your head, because there is no permanent, independent mind creating everything. The mind requires the perceived external world to spark into existence.
So both extremes are out.
It transcends dualism because subject and object aren't two separate things meeting in the middle. They co-arise and co-define each other.
And what about monism, the sort of New Age idea that everything is just one giant blob of cosmic oneness?
It transcends monism because Nagarjuna doesn't deny the conventional diversity of the world.
A chair is still different from the table.
Exactly. The sprout is different from the seed. The multiplicity exists conventionally. It is the middle way, avoiding the extreme of many independent things and the extreme of one giant indistinguishable thing.
And this framework leads to perhaps the most mind-bending theoretical point in the entire text.
The union of samsara and nirvana.
This is the pinnacle of Madhyamaka thought.
Really?
Yes. Samsara is the cycle of suffering. It is being trapped in cause and effect, birth and death, stress and anxiety. Nirvana is liberation, freedom from suffering. Right, the goal.
Throughout most religious and philosophical history, we think of them as two totally different places or states. You escape samsara to get to nirvana.
Like climbing a ladder out of a burning building.
Right. But Nagarjuna argues that because all these cycles, causality, motion, perception, are completely empty of inherent existence, they are nirvana when perceived with wisdom.
Wait, what?
Samsara and nirvana are the exact same cyclical reality. There is no physical difference in the universe.
It entirely depends on the tinted glasses.
Precisely.
If I wear the glasses of grasping, if I desperately need the cycles of cause and effect to be solid, permanent, and controllable, it is samsara, it's friction, it's suffering.
Yes.
But if I take those glasses off and see the cycles as a fluid, empty, beautiful, interdependent mirage, it is nirvana.
You do not escape the cycle to find liberation. You find liberation within the cycle by realizing it has no solid center to trap you.
Which pivots us perfectly to the practical significance of all this. Philosophy is wonderful, but how does knowing that we live in an illusory, oscillating karmic loop actually help the listener tomorrow morning?
In the real world.
Right. When they are stuck in traffic, when they are arguing with their partner, when they are facing a health crisis, how do we live in the fractal?
It all comes down to the practice of liberation through non-grasping. If you honestly examine your suffering, your daily stress, your deep anxieties, it almost invariably stems from trying to freeze one of these cycles.
Give me a concrete example.
Let's look at your career. You want a promotion. You want to permanently own a specific destination. You think, if I get that title, I will have arrived. I will be secure.
The ultimate object.
Or you want to freeze a perceiver.
Yeah.
You want everyone in your family to perceive you as the ultimate provider or the smartest person in the room forever. Or, as we discussed with the meeting, you want to perfectly control a cause to guarantee an exact effect.
And because reality is this constantly updating, centerless loop, freezing, it is physically, temporally, and philosophically impossible.
It's like trying to freeze a river with your bare hands.
So trying to do it causes massive internal friction.
Suffering is the friction of trying to stop a fluid reality. Recognizing the dreamlike, constantly updating nature of the cycle naturally salts the desperate need to cling to it.
You just let the river flow.
If you deeply understand that every destination instantly becomes a new starting point, you stop treating your goals as ultimate salvations. You get the promotion. It's great.
But you recognize that you instantly update into goer 2.
Exactly. You become a person with a new title, new responsibilities, and new challenges, and the cycle continues. The crushing anxiety drops away because you are no longer fighting the fundamental ontology of the universe.
I can hear the counter-argument forming, though.
There's always a counter-argument.
If I stop clinging, if I realize it's all an empty, centerless mirage where my causes don't inherently control effects, doesn't that just lead straight to nihilism?
It's a common feeling.
Like, why bother going to the meeting? Why bother getting out of bed? Why bother doing anything if it's all a karmic mirage?
That is the greatest danger of misunderstanding emptiness, and Nagarjuna warns against it fiercely. But remember the foundation we laid, the conventional truth.
It still functions.
The cycle is ultimately empty, but it functions. It functions beautifully. This understanding leads to a state of being that the texts describe as acting without acting.
Acting without acting, how does that look in daily life?
It means you fully engage with the world. You plan the meetings, you travel, you build deep relationships, you fight for justice, you try to improve society.
But you use these concepts, cause, destination, self, other, as provisional tools.
You wear them lightly. You act effectively in the conventional world, but you do it without the heavy, crushing psychological baggage of absolute certainty or absolute attachment to the outcome.
You're not desperate.
You play the game, fully engaged, fully passionate, but you fundamentally know it's a game.
Going back to our earlier analogy, we use the reflection in the mirror to comb our hair because the reflection conventionally works, but we don't try to smash the glass to grab the reflection and keep it in our pocket.
That is the essence of Madhyamaka practice. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this leads to the ultimate practical consequence, the highest ethical expression of this philosophy, boundless compassion.
Compassion? How does emptiness lead to compassion?
If you really trace the implications of the fractal cycle, the emptiness of these spheres completely redefines your relationship to every other living being.
Because if the perceived updates the perceiver, and my inside becomes the outside, then others are not fundamentally separate from me.
Exactly. If my karma, my actions, my causes are the exact conditions that shape the collective environment, and that collective environment is the exact object that conditions your perception and your reality, then the boundary between my suffering and your suffering evaporates entirely.
To hurt you is to quite literally tint the glasses that I have to look through tomorrow.
Yes. Compassion, in this framework, isn't some moral duty imposed from the outside by a higher power. It isn't a commandment you have to force yourself to obey.
It's not a rule.
It is the raw ontological reality of the universe. The suffering of the world is your suffering because you are a temporary node in the exact same infinite oscillating web.
Wow.
When you truly perceive the centerless cycle, boundless compassion is the only logical, rational response. You care for the collective exactly as naturally as you care for your own arm, because in the karmic fractal, they are the same interdependent system.
Okay, let's take a moment to reflect on the staggering scope of this journey.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started with the basic human assumption that reality is like a solid X-ray, made of fixed, measurable, independent parts.
But through the radical lens of Nagarjuna and the union of the two truths, we systematically deconstructed that entire worldview.
We looked at Chapter 1 and saw that causation isn't a linear march of progress, but an infinite loop where the effect constantly updates to become the new cause.
We examined Chapter 2 and saw that physical motion isn't a permanent self traveling unchanged through an empty void of space, but a continuum where the destination instantly redefines the goer.
And we explored Chapter 3 and saw that human perception isn't a passive security camera recording an objective world, but a profoundly co-creative loop where the perceived world intimately updates the perceiver's karma.
Reality is a beautiful, centerless fractal, where every sphere is constantly co-creating, conditioning, and updating everything else.
We are not nouns, we are verbs.
And realizing that fluid nature dissolves the painful boundaries between inside and outside, self and other, leading to a life of spaciousness, acting without acting, and boundless logical compassion.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final, deeply provocative thought to chew on. We just spent this entire deep dive building this incredibly expansive, mind-bending philosophical model.
We mapped out the fractal karmic cycle, the three spheres, the tetralemma, the two truths.
It is an elegant, meticulously constructed, beautiful system of thought.
But Nagarjuna, brilliant as he is, leaves us with one final trapdoor.
A trapdoor.
It is the concept of the emptiness of emptiness. Even this philosophical model we just built, even the profound concept of emptiness itself is empty of inherent existence.
So even the theory isn't solid.
It is not the ultimate solid truth. It is just another dependently arisen tool. In Buddhist tradition, it is compared to a raft used to cross a dangerous river.
You use the raft of Nagarjuna's logic to get across the turbulent, painful waters of your own confusion, your anxiety, and your grasping at solid things.
Yes.
But once you reach the shore of understanding, you don't pick up the heavy wooden raft and carry it around on your back for the rest of your life. You are invited, ultimately, to let go of the concept of the cycle itself.
You use the philosophy to destroy your false assumptions, and then you drop the philosophy. And what remains is the ability to rest entirely in the ineffable suchness of the present moment, experiencing reality exactly as it is, vividly and directly, before the conceptual mind ever tries to label it.
We want to thank you so much for going on this incredible deep dive with us today. It is no small feat to allow the very foundation of how you perceive reality to be challenged.
It takes a lot of courage.
As you go about your day today, as you walk to your car, as you speak to your coworkers, as you look at the world around you, we invite you to simply notice the cycles.
Notice how your actions update your environment, and how your environment instantly updates your perception.
Notice the verbs. And the next time you feel that desperate, painful urge to grasp onto a solid outcome, or you wish you could just see the clean, jagged white line on the X-ray of your life, remember that the X-ray is an illusion, and the true freedom is found in the flux. See you next time.